Guys, I just built my own auto body frame pulling machine, also known as a frame rack, and I want to show you how I did it. So these are materials that I'll be using. Now, this is a frame tower. I found this used locally on Craigslist, and I bought it for 300 bucks. I think that's a steal of a deal. This thing's in just about new condition, and it came with hydraulic ram. Tower was part of the frame rack that was originally sold in Sweden. Anyways, it's a Car-O-Liner brand. The only downside to using something that was built in Europe, the sizes. Their sizes are not the same as the sizes of just about everything that we use here in the States. So, for example, this opening right here, it has to be 5.5 inches. We don't have anything that's 5.5 inches if you are talking about square tubing or rectangular tubing, because US sizes go 4 inches, 5 inches, 6 inches. There's nothing really in between 5 and 6. So what I'm gonna do is I bought some material locally, and the main part of the base, the material that I'm using is 5x5 1/4-inch wall. I mean, this is going to be pretty sturdy. This will be, you know, this will suffice for sure. Now, I'll have a gap of about 1/2 inch, which I have to fill. So that's where steel plate will come into play. There, I got my 5.5 inches. Second problem that I ran into, same thing size-wise. The spacing between this wall and this shackle right here is 6 3/4 inch. So once again, what do? That's where this channel comes into play. It's about 1 3/4 inches wide, and that's going to be welded onto the side of the 5-inch square tube. My main goal for this frame rack was I wanted this thing to be portable, meaning it wasn't going to end up in my driveway, because, you know, that's where I like to park my cars. So this thing's going to be on wheels. I'll be able to wheel it out of the way. I have area on the side of my house where it's going to go, and I can tip it up on its side and just lean it against the wall. So the footprint of this thing's going to be close to nothing. And same thing with the tower. It's just going to roll up next to a wall, and all of it's going to be out of the way. Okay, cuts are made. I'll still have that long channel I'll have to cut up. I am trying to stay as close to the specs of the original deck of the frame rack. So, and by the deck I mean the bottom, what the actual car is going to be mounted on. So the only difference is the length of the original deck was about 13 feet, and mine is going to be about 10 feet. It'll be plenty for most of the cars that I'll be working on, because I'm not planning on working on trucks. It's mostly just going to be, you know, regular cars and SUVs like the one back there. The width is going to be 3 feet exactly, because that's what the width of the original deck was at. Okay, let's see where we're at. So, this way, level. This way, level. And this way, we're level. So last thing I gotta do is have to make sure that we're square. We are. Perfect. So yeah, now I just gotta clean up some of the rust and weld this upper piece up. So the deck is all welded up. Everything looks good. The last piece that's going to be welded on is this guy right here. So it's 1/2 inch plate. I'm going to put down a little bit of primer on the mating surface, so the underside of the plate and then the top of the tube will get sprayed. The reason being is later on, if some moisture gets underneath, I don't want there to be any rust. Paint and primer in one. Hopefully it'll do the trick. Here I'm making some caster adapters along with some tube and plate spacers. Caster adapters are all finished and painted, and the adapter actually consists of 3 pieces. The main tube that will slide inside of a tube of a frame deck, and then I got a 1/4 inch plate and then also a 1 inch tube. And the reason I have it set up this way is because I had to gain 1 1/4 inch height on top of this adapter, because overall it will bring up the deck to the appropriate height, so that way the frame tower can slide right under it. so the tower slides under the deck, and then it fixates in place by this deal right here. And the way to detach it would be tap that in, and then I just gotta rotate that piece down, and now the tower is free. Just gotta push it back. So we have the base to our frame rack. However, there is no way to attach a car to it. That brings us to the next step. We're going to use these materials to build a clamping system, and I'm going to use this Unicar frame rack as an inspiration. Now the reason this pattern was cut with these recesses was so I can just slide these pieces together like this jig puzzle. The reason I did it was so if I had a really hard pull, in case these welds were compromised and they were cracking under a lot of stress and a lot of load, the welds on the backside would back them up. So there's no way this bracket will ever crack. To minimize heat warping from welding, I clamped down the bracket to a piece of square tubing to keep all of the bracket components from moving. Four supports are done. Now I have to cut some notches into them. Let me tell you, drilling bolt holes was probably the worst part of the whole project because I had to drill a lot of holes and it took forever. This represents only about a half of everything that had to be drilled out. Here I'm threading the holes for smaller bolts that will later become the teeth of the jaws. And here we are sharpening and later tampering the smaller bolts that will later become the teeth of the jaws. So the next step is to weld up the base for the clamping system. It's yeah, this is just, well, it's part of it. Eventually it's gonna go in here, gonna get all welded up. But before then, this piece is gonna have to get welded to the bottom piece. Okay, the welding is done for most part. This is what they turned out like. The only thing I gotta do is I gotta weld this little spacer right here on all four of the legs, and gotta get it painted. So now let me show you how this thing all comes together. So now let me show you why this is all set up the way it is. So this is just a backing plate that will eventually get all scarred up from the bolts pushing into it. I just did not want these bolts denting the actual rack. So I will tighten up these bolts. And what it did was it pushed this whole arm really close up against the deck. And the whole purpose of this setup down here is so when there is weight being applied on this arm, like when the vehicle is on it, I don't want these two pieces of the arm spreading due to weight. So this piece goes in, and same thing, there's two bolts on the bottom that will secure these two plates together. This way they will not spread. Next step up, this is all put together. It's all in one piece now, but this piece just slides over. Once these two bolts are tight, they will pull up this plate up, and then it'll secure this little tower in place so it will not move. And in turn, once these bolts are tight, it will push these teeth into a pinch weld, and that will keep the car in place. Let me quickly show you how this tower works. So it'll swivel side to side, so this way you can make the pulls in just about any position. And then also this way. So this project is done. Now the big question is, will this frame rack hold or will it snap under pressure? What do you guys think? Why don't you leave me a comment down below with your thoughts? I have another video coming out here pretty soon where we're going to be making a frame pull using that frame rack. So stay tuned for that, and make sure to subscribe, smash that like button, and we'll see you soon.